Hello! Welcome to my channel. My name is Krista Llewellyn and I am a makeup artist and a makeup educator, and today I'm going to be showing you a few airbrushing techniques to create realistic looking zombie skin. Obviously, zombies don't actually exist in real life, so it's a bit of an oxymoron to say that we're going to be doing a realistic zombie, but for the most part what we're going to be trying to achieve is a rotting corpse or like a dead body. If you look up reference photos of a cadaver or a dead body, you'll see that there are different sort of colorings that happen when the body is starting to decay. And obviously it will differ depending on how the person actually died. So it's always good to have as much reference photos as you can. Obviously these reference photos can be a bit triggering and can be a little much, so just keep that in mind. If it is something that you are sensitive to, maybe don't look up those photos. But it's really important to look up real world situations to get that coloring so that it looks more like something that is actually believable in real life. So looking at different skin diseases, looking at how the skin looks when it is rotting, when it is starting to decay, and those various different colors is really ideal for creating a zombie look. Because after all, they are a dead body that has come back to life. The color choices that you'll have for zombie skin, or just like your zombie aesthetic in general, will vary depending on the type of zombie that you want to do. And obviously different skin tones will decay differently, so looking up those reference photos as well. But for me, what I'm going to be doing is sort of going to be a little bit more gray. It is going to have some reds in it, but it's also going to have some of those like purpley greenish as well. For the most part, I want it to look sallow, I want it to look diseased and rotting. So that's where I'm going to start. And for today's video, I'm actually not going to be doing my face, I'm going to be doing my hand. It's going to be a little bit easier for me to show you how to do these airbrushing techniques when I don't have to constantly have my eyes closed and have like a weird angle for it. So you can definitely apply these to the face, but for right now we're going to focus on my hand, so let's get started. So hello, welcome to my station here. This is kind of the first time that we're looking down onto my table instead of looking at my face, so hi, I'm still here. I don't know if I even hello. You'll just be seeing my hands for the most part since I am just doing my hand and my arm. Today we're going to be using a majority of just airbrush. I'm going to be using my Iwata Eclipse here. This is really good at getting some nice fine detail, but it's also good about with getting large surface areas painted. It's a really good working brush. I sort of use this as my go-to airbrush for all of my gigs. And then for the airbrush makeup, we're going to be using a lot of the Endura line from European Body Art, even if they are in these separate little bottles here, because I like to decant my stuff. If you see these little bottles, it's still the Endura line. They're just in different casings, but from now I will just get going, seeing as it's really boring listening to me talk and nothing going on with my hands here. So let's jump right into it. So to start out, I'm actually going to take this aged blood color from Endura. You want to make sure that you shake all of your airbrush paints before actually putting them into your cup, because they do tend to separate. And for the most part, I'm going to be working at a lower PSI. I don't really want to go above like 15 PSI. And I'm gonna start by making small honeycomb-like shapes on my arm with this aged blood tone. And what that's gonna do is going to create sort of like a mottled texture, showing like a breakup in the skin. I'm just sort of going around making squiggly lines. And I'll do my best to try to talk before actually pressing down on my compressor so that, you know, I'm not talking over a bunch of noise, so. And And this doesn't have to be super precise or exact. You want to kind of get some variation in there so it's not a perfect like honeycomb shape every single time. You just sort of want to get that sort of feeling. Because if you look at the vein system underneath the skin, they do sort of connect like that in sort of like a honeycomb pattern. So that's what we're trying to achieve here. You can see that as I'm going towards my fingers more, I'm trying to curl my knuckles so that not all the way like in a fist, but just ever so slightly. And the reason why you want to do that is if you are painting a hand with it flat on like this, you're not going to be able to get into these little crevices in here. So for hands, it's best to sort of paint them in like a claw shape. That way the paint goes into those little sections there. Now this part of the hand right here is sort of the trickiest bit. Even if I wasn't doing it on myself, it's pretty tricky on actors as well. So it's best to have them sort of lift their hands up, like imagine that you could see this one is up, but just up this way and then painting it straight up, because this is a section that's very easily missed in a makeup. So I'm gonna try to contort my body a little bit to be able to fill in that area. I just sort of did vague, like honeycomb patterns, squiggly lines. That really helps to create that sort of broken up mottled texture. And in fact, with this color that I have, I'm just gonna do a little bit of detail around my nail beds. Because something that I think really sells a zombie look is how gross and disgusting their nails look. So I'm just gonna go in. And you can see just doing that little bit, that little tiny bit of color, how that makes it look so much more gross than these other nails right here. So you can see how gross that just makes the whole look already. So what I like to do when I have extra paint in my airbrush is I have this spray pot, I believe it's called, and I just spray it out into there. That way it doesn't sort of fill the room with alcohol. I mean, you can still kind of see it coming out of here, but it's not as intense. So now I'm going to make some veins, and I want my veins to be sort of like a dark purpley. So I'm gonna take some of this liver as well as some of the contusion color that I have to create my vein. Again, your color choices will depend on what type of zombie you wanna be going for. Now for veins, you wanna turn your PSI down pretty far, enough so that it actually like comes out of your gun, but you don't want there to be a whole lot of pressure coming from it. And I'm actually going to take off the cone on the front of my airbrush. And the reason why you want to do that is because when you get real close to the skin, it will start to kick back with that cone. And without it, it will draw sort of like a straight line. So turning down the PSI. And I'm going to try to follow some of these squiggly lines that I've created to emphasize some deeper veins. So I'm at like 10 PSI. And I'm sort of bouncing my hand around, again, sort of having some variation with how far away my airbrush is from the skin so that it gets a little lighter and a little darker. Again, you want to look at some reference to see how veins sort of interact with each other, how they connect. Once I get sort of like my big main connecting ones in, I like to go in and put some smaller ones that sort of end out so they don't really connect to anything. So now that I have my main lines down, I'm going to go back through and sort of darken a few that I really want to show through. And the reason why I did it at this stage is because I'm going to go over it with a mottled white, and it's going to make it look like the veins are actually coming from beneath the skin instead of sitting on top of the skin. Okay, so I got my veins on. I'm gonna go through again in my nail bed and sort of create a little bit more depth and dimension with this purple. Again, just emphasizing that grossness there. I'm actually going to put a little bit of coloring on the tips of my fingers too. You'll never see a zombie with clean hands, so it's always good to take care of the fingers. Like so. So it's already getting pretty gross just with those two colors. Now I'm gonna empty this out. So now I'm going to go in with my lighter color and do the modeling over all this work I did here. I'm gonna do my pale dead color from Endura. Again, your colorings will depend on the type of zombie that you're doing, the type of skin tone that you're doing. Now I'm gonna go on with my pale dead, which is just sort of like a grayish, greenish sort of white. I'm gonna do exactly what I did with our aged blood tone, except I'm gonna try to aim more for these spots that don't have any pigment on it. And again, you want to bounce around with this. You don't want it to be super precise and exact. You actually want that sort of more organic texture to it. So I'm going to take my Pale Dead and hit a few highlights just to emphasize some bone structure. So like especially on my knuckles. And again, I'm not going just with one solid color. I'm sort of doing like the breakup technique, but just having it collected a bit more closely. Now that I have that white in there, I'm actually going to go in with a little bit of a yellowy base as well, just to get a little bit more color variation in there. I'm actually going to mix my Pale Dead with my Rust Yellow. So a little bit of Pale Dead, and then my Rusty Yellow. So I'm getting like a pale yellowy tone. And I'm not going to go all over with this, I'm just going to be a little selective and put it in certain areas, just to give some color breakup, some color variation in the skin. So that just gives a little bit more of like a sallow skin look, sort of like that rotting skin. I'm actually going to go with this yellow color and just go right on top of my nails. I'll actually go through and make them a little bit more green and gross looking, but having that light yellow color on top will really help. So now I'm going to go through with my dirty brown, and I'm going to add some contour to my hand. So I'm just going to go in the spaces that I want to be a little bit recessed to look more emaciated and stuff. Because it's a rotting body, it will start to decay and start to hollow out. But again, I'm not going just straight in with a solid color. I'm going to go in and try to do a little bit more of that breakup so that it looks more natural.
first base of it, I am going to go through with a little bit more of a dark purple and just sort of add some blotches of that into those darker spaces. I'm actually just going to make little spots with this, almost like age spots, just in some of those deepest sections. And what I'm doing here is sort of the same effect of like where the blood is starting to pool in the skin. Just give a little bit more texture, variation, makes it look gross. Okay, so that's sort of the purpley. I'm gonna go back over with that lighter skin tone just to get more breakup. I'm actually gonna change up which color I'm using, so I'm gonna go in with my Fetid Flesh, which is a little bit of a darker pale dead color. I'm just gonna go all over with that to try to blend everything in. So now we've got that Fetid Flesh color all over. I'm gonna go through with a little bit of olive green just for my nails. You see, it kind of makes them look a bit more rotting. I also want to go back through with my aged blood tone and just hit the sides of the nails again. I actually want it to bleed onto the nail itself. And now that I have this aged blood tone in here, I'm actually going to add a little bit more of a red into it. I'm going to color my palm to look like it's been covered in blood. Adding some prime red into that aged blood. Just very lightly and loosely painting the palm red. Obviously, you know, it's a little funny. I'm gonna go back in with a little bit more of that aged blood just to give some dimension. But this is a trick that I like doing, especially for on set, because the palm is the hardest to keep makeup on. So if you just like paint it red like they've dug through a bunch of bodies, then you can just slap some blood on it and call it a day. We got our palm all bloody, the rest of our hand. You know what? Let me put some like drippy. Droopy bits on there as if the blood has dripped down my arm. And then the next few things that I'm going to do are actually not with airbrush. So I'm going to switch to my brushes. Now I'm going to go with some spatter. I have my European Body Art palette that I put into this Makeup Forever palette. So I'm gonna grab a cut down chip brush, which is really good for spattering. And what I like to do is I like to dip it into the cup. And just like so. I can mix on top here. Go with my darker colors first. So I'm gonna go with a little bit of brown. This is a dirty brown. I'm gonna do a hint of prime black into that just to make it a little bit darker. Spatter that all over. Now I'm gonna get sort of a more pigmented version of this color. I'm gonna spray it on my palm. Sort of heavily collect it on there. Again, you want the palm to look as dirty as possible, as if they've been rummaging through stuff. And you can sort of get closer with your brush to get more of an even coloring. Now I'm gonna go in with some yellowy green. Spatter that all over. And this sort of just helps to like diffuse everything and bring it all together. Do a little bit of red spatter as well. Vein tone color. Again, spraying some of that red onto the palms as well. And then the last thing I'm gonna do is that lighter flesh tone. Now I only have a prime white here, so I'm gonna mix it so I get more of like a grayish, light skin tone. So I'm gonna mix a little bit of that green, a little bit of brown, just spattering with the mixture of a light skin tone that I did, using prime white and some brown and some green. You never want to go just straight prime white for a zombie. You always want to sort of mix it, gray it out a little bit more. I might add a little bit more blood tone just right in here. So now I'm going to take some detail brushes and sort of finish off my fingernails. So I have some small stipple brushes that I'll be using for the details around my fingernails. So I did a little stippling around the nail beds. I did a few little stipples on the hands itself. I'm gonna go through with some brown. Slightly sort of hit the nail itself, especially at the tip. I'm just giving some breakup and some dirty discoloration. Right in here too, because that's gonna be the dirtiest part. It's right at the very tip of the nail, the tip of the finger. Yeah, that's about it. Let me pull this away so you can see the full look. Pull this up a little bit too. So you always want to paint past where your costume's gonna be in case things, you know, move up a little bit. So I've painted to here, and I'm gonna put my sleeve just like about an inch above where I've painted. And then the final thing that I want to do is add a little bit of Pro Seal to it. And what this does is it helps to give a little bit of shine back into the skin. The paint sort of looks pretty matte, and we do want to get a little bit of shine onto it. Fully dry. Costume back on. There we go. And there you have it. There is a painted zombie hand.
Now, like I said earlier in the video, you can take these techniques and sort of add them to other parts of the body. You can do this with the face, you could do this with, you know, the entire body if you're doing like a full body paint. This is it. This is the hand. So, that is my zombie hand. So yeah, that's a zombie hand. It's pretty simple. Once you get the actual like principles down, you can really do this with sort of any skin tone. You can apply this technique to different sorts of creatures as well. You could do it for demons, you could do it for ghosts, ghouls, things like that. Really, this mottled texture is seen throughout multiple areas of effects makeup. You really want to have this like broken up texture. So yeah, it's my zombie hand. Thank you for watching the video. I hope that you found this informative, that it was helpful for you. If you have any questions about the process or if you have any comments on the video, you can go ahead and leave a comment below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel if you're interested in more content like this. I've got another video where I show you how to do realistic scars. I go through my kit for my COVID safety stuff. A whole bunch of other videos. You can find them all on my channel, so go ahead and click the subscribe. And thank you guys for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video. No. 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 No.